we'll talk about this some more when we get back. You're listening to Turtle Island News with Tracy Kennedy.
Got your number, babe. Child, I got my eye on you. Well, I've got your number, baby. But I've got my eye on you. Well, I've got your number, baby. I'm watching you. I'm watching everything you do.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, I realize the information is rather dry, of course, but it all leads up, at least we'll back up where I'm taking you next on this fantastic voyage. In 1932, Roosevelt was swept into office, quite literally. Once there, he had sweeping emergency banking measures. Then and only then did the Fed begin to expand money into the economy to begin to aid the starving American people. It would not have changed unless he did a deal. Franklin Delano Roosevelt has been called an American hero. Reality, he was a New York banker. He had conspired with the Fed to outlaw, confiscate all gold which was held privately. The guise was to prop up the American economy, right? The scheme would be to further impoverish the American people, and he did this very, very well. At first, he rallied against the money changers, of course, and saying that was the cause of the Depression. His inaugural address even included statements like practices of unscrupulous money changers, yada yada yada. 2 days after, Roosevelt declared a bank holiday, closed all banks. Later the same year, he outlawed private ownership of all gold bullion and all gold coins, with only the exception of ultra-rare coins. Most of the coins that had remained in the hands of Americans were in the form of gold coin. This new decree, in effect, was a consolidation of private and personal assets. Those who didn't comply risked as many as 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine, which is equivalent to more than a $100,000 fine today. Across the small towns of America, people didn't trust this order. Many people were torn in keeping their hard-earned wealth and obeying the government. Those that did turn in the gold were paid the official price for it, which was $20.66 US per ounce. So unpopular was this confiscation order that nobody in the government took credit for it. No congressman took credit for the bill. At the signing ceremony, President Roosevelt made it clear to all present that he was not the author of the bill as well, and had not even read it. Even the Secretary of the Treasury said that he had not read the bill either. However, the Secretary was quoted as saying, It's what the experts wanted. Roosevelt convinced the public to give up their gold by stating that pooling America's resources was necessary to get the nation out of the Depression. Great fanfare. He ordered a new bullion depository that would hold the mountain of gold of the U.S. government was illegally confiscating. By 36, the U.S. bullion depository at Fort Knox was completed, January 37. The gold began to flow in. The ripoff of all ages was about to commence. Once all the gold had been turned in, the official price of gold was raised to $35 an ounce, but only foreigners could sell their gold at that high price. The money changers then, that had heeded Warburg's warning anyway, had gotten the cash out just before it bottomed out, purchased the gold at 20.66 an ounce, shipped it to London, where it could be sold back to the government for nearly double the amount it was purchased in, while the average American had turned the gold in starved. True story. When the gold started arriving, Fort Knox, unprecedented security, while thousands of official guests watched the arrival of this 9-car train from Philadelphia. The train was guarded by armed soldiers, postal inspectors, Secret Service men, and guards from the U.S. Mint. It was all wonderfully great theater. America's gold supply across the land had been pulled, supposedly for the benefit of the American people, supposed to be stored at Fort Knox. But all that security would soon be breached by the government itself. Now, we have a beautiful stage set before you for a great big fat blood-dripping war. A war that would pile up debt like the world had never seen. The war spending rate was 30 times higher than the war spending rate World War I. In fact, the American taxpayer paid 55% of the total Allied expense of the war. But just as important, each nation that was involved in World War II greatly multiplied their debt. U.S., the federal debt went from $43 billion in 1940 to $257 billion in 1950. That increase was 598%. Between 1940 and 1950, the Japanese debt swelled by 1,348%. The French debt grew by 583%. The Canadian debt soared by 417%. Children, as war casualties, were not counted in this profit loss statement. And after the war, the world was officially divided into. One was called communism. The other was called capitalism. Those are the only two countries that are in existence today. Both sides were set to fight it out in one large, never-ending, perpetually and highly profitable war. Arms race, if you will. How? This was the final step here for the central bankers to embark on their 3-step plan to centralize the economic system of the entire world and bring it about their global government, their new world order. If you're worried about the new world order, it's too late. Step 1. Central bank domination of national economies worldwide. Check. Already done. Number 2. Centralize regional economies to organize, such as European Monetary Union and regional trade unions like NAFTA. Step 3. Centralize the world economy through 1. A world central bank. and do away with all international tariffs and treaties like GATT. Step 1 for sure completed long time ago. Steps 2 and 3 at least are well underway. I would say it's already happened, but I realize that not everyone agrees with me, but okay. Well into the final stage of completion anyway. The largest holder of gold today is the IMF. It and the central banks now control more than 2/3 of the entire world's gold supply, giving them the ability to manipulate the world's gold supply and the world's money supply whenever they want. What happened to all that gold, by the way? Fort Knox. I think it's still there, right? Should be right there. The end of World War II, Fort Knox vaults contained more than 700 million ounces of gold, about 70% of all the gold on the planet. Most Americans believe it's still there. How much? How much gold is there? To be honest, nobody really knows, despite the fact that federal law requires an annual physical audit of all the gold held there. U.S. Treasury consistently refuses to do one. The truth is, I think anyway, while there has been no reliable audit of that gold at Fort Knox since Eisenhower, he ordered one in 1953. So where did the disappearing gold go? Was it the Anunnaki? Did they come down and suck our gold because it was all in one place? Well, maybe. Okay, not entirely. Over the years, it has been sold off to European interests at the price of $35 an ounce. This was done during a time when it was illegal for any American to purchase any gold at Fort Knox. In fact, in the late 70s, the family of Firestone Corporation set up a string of dummy corporations to purchase the Fort Knox gold and keep it in Swiss banks. However, they were caught and prosecuted. But by 1971, all of the nation's gold that was held at Fort Knox had been removed and brought back to London. Once the gold was gone, Nixon closed the gold window by repealing the President Roosevelt's Gold Act of 1934, finally making it legal once again for Americans to purchase gold. As a result, gold prices went up, soaring. 9 years later, gold went from $35 an ounce to $880 US an ounce. 25 times what the gold in Fort Knox was sold for. The last fortune in history of the world was stolen, with not one governmental official ever blowing said whistle. So, Fort Knox. How did it start? Well, New York periodical, 1974. The article charged the Rockefeller family with manipulating Federal Reserve to sell off the Fort Knox gold at bargain basement rates to anonymous European speculators, not to anyone in the United States. Your gold was taken out of the country long time ago. Okay? 3 days later, the anonymous source of this story, Louise Archie-Klaus Bauer, mysteriously fell to her death from the 10th floor of her apartment building in New York. No, and before you ask me, I don't know if she fell onto some bullet. But how could she have known the greatest crime ever perpetrated against the American people? Boyer had been a longtime secretary of Nelson Rockefeller. For the next 14 years, Ed Durrell, a wealthy Ohio industrialist, devoted himself to the truth of the whereabouts of the gold. A one-man campaign, sending letters and thousands and thousands and thousands out. And Roosevelt wrote, "Allegations of missing gold from our Fort Knox vaults has been widely discussed in European financial circles.